Okay, I'll repeat. This is Chair Alan Hilton of the Research Advisory Committee for NELHA calling our RAC committee meeting to order at this time, 11:02 a.m. We have an agenda that was distributed to all of the RAC members that are participating, and I really appreciate you all making yourselves available for what are really quite infrequent meetings of the Research Advisory Committee to take care of business that can only be done in this setting according to statute. I guess I have a question for Laurence about the current practice on how we're going to do minutes, because I know that the board has shifted to doing recordings and posting those, as opposed to what we used to do was written minutes, which will take us to our first agenda item that had to be subsequently approved at the next meeting, right? So the last time the RAC met was in 2019, and since we're meeting again, we'll approve those last minutes as the first agenda item. But for this meeting, will the recording suffice?
Yeah, so practice since July of this year has been to place a full recording on our website. And we do a summary of basically the main action items and the main agenda items. It's a very basic summary that has the times and, you know, who passed the motion or who proposed the motion, passed, and
right, with the timestamps. Right, got it. Okay. And then those summaries are subsequently approved at the next meeting or not? I mean, we can continue with that. I just kind of want to get some clarification.
That is correct. John, okay. Is there anything you would add to that?
No, not to that. I just wanted to remind that we should do a roll call vote before we get into any business.
Or a roll call of all the attendees, right? Yeah. All right. Well, why don't we do that first? I'm Alan Hilton. I'm the current chair of the RAC. I'm here alone in my office, and I'd like to just go down the list. Maybe I'll just call your name, and then you can respond with who you are and what your affiliation is, and whether or not you're alone in your location, kind of consistent with how we do it in the board meetings. So let me hand it to Laurence to go around the NELHA conference room first with who's there.
Sure. Starting with board RAC members, my apologies.
Dennis Bishop.
Good to see you, Dennis. Good to see you in person.
Yes, here I am. Yeah. I'm the only guy. I got the whole table to myself.
Excellent.
Also in the room, Laurence Lombardia, Deputy Director at NELHA.
Austin Edge, Administrative Assistant, NELHA.
And now we're moving on to the Zoom.
Yeah, I'll just go down the list as I see them. Ned Murphy.
Ned Murphy, RAC member, consulting geochemist, alone at this venue.
Thank you. Todd Lowe.
I am Todd Lowe, State Department of Agriculture, Aquaculture Development, and I'm alone. Thanks.
All right. John Wiltshire.
John Wiltshire. I'm alone. I'm RAC member. I'm the retired director of the Hawaii Undersea Research Lab and the past chairman of the Hawaii Department of Ocean and Resources Engineering, now retired and living in Waikoloa.
Thank you, John. Don Thomas.
Don Thomas, University of Hawaii, Hawaii Institute of Geophysics, participating remotely from home. I'm alone.
Also longest serving RAC member, I think, amongst those still here. Sean Moss.
John Moss, Executive Director at Oceanic Institute of Hawaii Pacific University. I'm a RAC member and I'm alone.
All right, thank you, Sean. Cherie.
Aloha, Cherie Kawahi, Aquaculture Extension Agent with Hawaii Sea Grant by myself.
Thank you. I see two others on. There's Chun KB and Mark Ladau. If you could, well, let's go with Chun KB first.
I think he doesn't have the microphone, so he chats.
Okay, let me open up the chat here. While he's doing that, Mark Ladau, could we hear from you? Also doesn't have a mic. Okay. Well, if Chun KB and Mark Ladau could just put in your chat what your affiliation is, we'd appreciate it. Oh, and it looks like we got Pat Cross just connecting right now, so we'll get him too.
So Mark Ladow is with Hawaii Public Radio.
Ah, okay. Hello.
Yeah.
And I see Kay Chun is from DHHL.
DBED, yeah.
Right. And then Pat Cross, you just joined us. We're basically doing a roll call of everyone in attendance. And all we just want you to say is your name, your affiliation, and whether or not you're alone at your current location, or if there's anyone there with you.
Yeah, Pat Cross, University of Hawaii, Hawaii Natural Energy Institute in particular. And I am sitting in my family room and I am alone.
Well, thank you, Pat. Thank you for all of you for making time, as I said earlier, for joining us for one of our very infrequent RAC meetings. Let's see, can we move on to the first order of business, which was review and approval of minutes from the last meeting of the Research Advisory Committee, which was held August 26, 2019. As I described earlier for Pat that just joined, we typically have to approve minutes of prior meetings at the next meeting. And since we meet so infrequently, we're going back pretty far there, but it was a similar meeting as the purpose of today's meeting. And the minutes are published in the RAC book that was distributed ahead of time. I can maybe just make a couple of comments about the minutes, and if I have the ability to share my screen, I'd like to do that too. Do I have that?
You should be
You
able to,
should.
yeah.
All right, let's see. Share screen. How do you do that on Zoom?
There's-
Oh, share, here it is. Okay. All right. Okay, share. All right, hopefully you're seeing the copy of the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, good. All right. So the last meeting was similar in purpose to this meeting, which was to nominate a member, a RAC member to serve in the capacity as RAC secretary. The authority for that comes from the statute that governs NELHA and set NELHA up. We have a copy of that I can show you on this other tab from HRS 227D-4. It describes the Research Advisory Committee, and kind of down there in the middle toward the end, it says that members of the advisory committee shall elect the chairperson and secretary of the committee, who shall serve as members of the board. So, it's the members of the committee that make that election, and then that election is reported to the board, and the board will act on that at the next meeting. So that comes from the statute. I suggest you all take some time, when you do have time, to look up HRS 227 to get familiar with everything else in the statute about NELHA, but the Research Advisory Committee is called out explicitly in terms of what its function is and where the board seats come from. There was another document shared in the minutes 5 years ago, which was a memo from 2006. Attorney General at the time was Brian Yee, offering a description of the RAC for the then executive director of NELHA, Ron Baird, and when sunshine law does and doesn't apply to how the RAC conducts its business for the benefit of NELHA. So we can share this memo for those of you that haven't seen it before, maybe after the meeting. I'll ask NELHA to send it out to everybody who attended, because it has some pretty good information, as do the minutes of the last meeting that I'm going to ask you all to approve. So that's, I guess, my preamble to, do I need a motion, John, to get the minutes approved?
Yes.
Calling for a motion to approve last meeting minutes.
So move.
That was Ned
Second.
Murphy, thank you. And second from
Don Thomas.
Don, thank you. All
Sure.
right.
I'm sorry, who was first?
Ned, right?
Okay. Thank you.
Right. So get past the minutes. So the next item of new business
Is there a
is,
vote or any objections?
oh, sorry, right. I can, if there's no objections among the RAC members, we can consider it passed unanimously by acclamation. Did I say that right? So are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. So new business items, discussion and decision-making to make a nomination and election of a member to serve as the RAC secretary. This is necessitated because Phil Bossert, who was elected as RAC secretary back in 2019, will be moving off island a couple continents away, a month or two from now, and has decided it's time for him to move on. So it opens up a spot amongst the current members to select a RAC secretary. I'd like to entertain a motion, if I can do it this way, John, to name someone who I believe is willing to serve and call for that motion and call for a second.
Yes, you can do that.
So I'd like to entertain a motion to nominate John Wiltshire to serve as the RAC secretary.
So so moved.
Thank you, Don. And second, I think
I'm
that was
willing to
Ned.
serve.
Yeah. And John is willing to serve. Thank you. One thing I think John brings as a great advantage is he does reside quite nearby. The organization John used to lead as director of the Undersea Research Lab at UH, operated the research submersibles that surveyed the pipelines periodically, which is a new and burning issue in terms of the shape of those pipelines, what we have to do about it in the near future going forward. John, you're going to hear more about that at future meetings. And if you review some of the recordings and minutes of the last couple of meetings, there's a lot of material there. So we will welcome your expertise in helping the board move forward on a lot of issues, pretty much across the board with everything NELHA has got going these days. We appreciate your willingness to serve. So we've had the motion, we've had a second. I'll ask if anyone objects. And hearing none, we'll consider the motion passed for John to serve as the RAC secretary.
Chair, you should just ask if there's any discussion or anything from the members or.
Sure. Yeah. John, you can say more about yourself, or does anyone else have any discussion to add to this topic?
Well, let me just add a few words. The Hawaii Undersea Research Lab, which ran the Pisces submersibles, enjoyed working very closely with NELHA for many years, surveying those pipelines, and that was very useful for both ourselves and NELHA. Now, unfortunately, over time, the Undersea Research Lab lost its funding, and the submersibles are now laid up. So future surveys of the pipelines will have to use another technology, presumably an ROV, of which there are many advanced versions around. But I think the maintenance of those pipelines is very important and kind of serves as the basis for the strength of NELHA. And it's one of the key things that NELHA offers to the future scientific community for deep sea aquaculture and energy research. So I'd like to continue to participate in that and certainly bring some past expertise to it.
Well, thanks, John. And you're a short drive away from where the board holds its meetings every couple of months. So we'll look forward to seeing you sitting around that table. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Any other discussion? And if there are no objections, we will consider the motion adopted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item of new business, discussion of potential new RAC members to recommend to the NELHA executive director. So while the RAC, per that statute I showed you, does select from its own membership the chair and the secretary, new members are added to the RAC pretty much at the discretion of the NELHA executive director with board approval. Last time we had a meeting, we recommended 3 members, one of which was John, the other 2, Pat Cross and Tom, who unfortunately passed away a year and a half ago or so, Tom Reed. But we have since had a couple of members join since that time through Greg's action. But with Phil departing now, it sort of creates a member vacancy. And this is a fairly informal process whereby names can be given to the NELHA director to consider for adding to the Research Advisory Committee. I am aware of one individual that has expressed some interest. So I guess I can throw the name out, but in terms of further deliberation on it, it will really be at the NELHA executive director's discretion, which, by the way, the ED is technically a vacant position. Laurence is holding it in an acting capacity while the board searches for a new hire to be the new executive director, which will be happening hopefully in fairly short order here. There's a special purpose meeting for moving on that item, I think, coming up this month. But there was one person that expressed some interest, Dr. Terry Searles, who I believe currently has an affiliation where you work, Pat, at HNEI, Hawaii Natural Energy Institute. And he's had some involvement in consulting and assessing on different NELHA activities over many years. He presented at the last board meeting, has expressed some interest, so I think we'd like to entertain that, along with anyone else that current members or members of the public might be interested in suggesting for the director to consider. Can open that for discussion if anyone has anything to say or add to that.
There, can you stop sharing your screen?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so not hearing any further discussion. I don't know if we need to make that an official, an official act, take official action on a recommendation of that type, John, because other RAC members have been added without it. It was really just informational.
I don't think it needs a RAC vote, and if there are other interested people or suggestions later, those can be given directly to the ED.
That's right. I believe that was the last item of, last agenda item other than announcements and adjournment.
Maybe, can I add, if there are any suggestions for other names, those can be given to us at a later time. I don't think this would come to the board until earliest January in any case, so there's plenty of time if anybody has any ideas. And I also don't think that there's a limit on the amount of people on the RAC, nor a minimum number.
Yep. Thank you. Any announcements? Okay, if there's none, then I think we'll move to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you, Don. Can I second that myself?
I'll second it.
Dennis Bishop over here has seconded.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. All right. Well, thanks everyone for your time. I think we covered what we needed to do today. Well, welcome aboard, John.
Thank you.
And we'll see you at future board meetings.
Yes,
And thank all of you for your continued inputs when we're called upon to review certain projects. Offering your individual opinions on that is the material that really does help guide the board in making decisions or considering issues that may not be obvious to them when they first get proposals about future projects. So again, thank you all for continuing to help out in that capacity. And we'll call that it.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, sure.
Go. Painless.